Well, good evening. Hello, how are you? Wherever you are in the world, and it's 9 p.m. here in Port Stewart in Northern Ireland. And as promised, every weekday evening at this time, I'm reading a chapter from my books. And at this stage, we've got up to chapter 13. So this evening, I'm going to read from chapter 13 of Paperboy. And this is a chapter entitled Sharing Streets with Soldiers. Very much an experience of 1970s Belfast. Very few people tramp the streets of the Upper Shankill as much as a paperboy. Compared to me, even Orange men were half-hearted and seasonal part-timers. My fellow professionals, who also marched the streets on a daily basis, were postmen, milkmen, breadmen, and soldiers. The postman delivered bills from the Great Universal Club Book, letters from your pen pal in New Zealand, sea monkey eggs, and your 11 plus results. The milkman woke you up very early, even before the farming roundup on downtown radio, with the comforting hum of his electric milk float. These early morning sounds once triggered a dream that I was Wilfred Owen from English class writing a poem about the clink of giggling glass bottles, as yet blissfully unaware of their impending metamorphosis into petrol bombs. The breadman delivered delicious barn brack loaf for butter smothering, as well as soda and potato bread for the mammoth Ulster fry your father cooked on a Saturday morning. The soldiers were different, though. They weren't delivering anything, and they were usually the only ones with guns. The soldiers had been a constant presence on our street for as long as I could remember. Apart from Thomas O'Hara from BRA and Patrick Walsh from the School of Music, they were the only people I had ever met who weren't the same as me. Nearly everyone else was white and Protestant and British. When I was younger, I used to think everyone in the world was white and Protestant and British. Even Doctor Who, and he was from the planet Gallifrey. The soldiers brought the outside world to our well-scrubbed doorsteps. They usually had English accents like people on TV, except not as posh. Sometimes the soldiers on our street had Scottish accents, and sometimes they were black. I soon learned that there were different regiments that came and went, but the only ones I could ever distinguish were the Scotchies, because they talked like the Bay City Rollers, and the Paras, because Catholics hated them the most because of Bloody Sunday, and so that meant we had to like them the best. If you asked the soldiers to show you their guns, they would say things like, "All right, mate," just like Norman Wisdom in a black and white movie. I was fascinated by all the stuff they carried. The gear they had was heavier than a paper bag on a Friday night. They had berries, bulletproof vests and radios, and they had the most impressive big boots, and I was sure would be able to accommodate an absolute fortune of coins. All the women in our street loved the soldiers, especially Mrs. Piper, who adored them. Ah, God love the wee critters. They're awful young and they don't even know what they're doing over here, and them dirty IRA brutes is trying to kill them, she would say. Mrs. Piper talked about the soldiers as if they were children, which I thought was strange because children weren't allowed guns. The soldiers were here to protect us from the IRA, so during the day when the men were out at work, all the women in our street would invite them in for a cup of tea. I noticed that they never asked the soldiers to come in when their own men were around, and I realised this must have been something to do with male rivalry. Perhaps it would have been like Sharon Burgess inviting Donny Osmond into the Westie Disco for a packet of potato cheese and onion crisps and brown lemonade while I was there. I don't know, in fact, how the soldiers ever made it up our street in a single day, because everyone wanted to give them tea and buns. I, for one, was jealous. No one ever offered a paperboy a cup of tea. Not even Mrs. Grant ever asked me into her scullery for so much as a piece and jam. Although, actually, she never asked the soldiers in either, because her Richard was always off working at home with his chest. Aware of the preferential treatment given to soldiers compared to paper boys, I was sufficiently irked to ask my big brother one time, how would they stop the IRA invading our street if they're always halfway through a gravy ring and balancing a cup and saucer on their khaki knees? Why's a bappy, lad? Was my brother's thoughtful reply. This tradition of making tea for the soldiers soon became something of a competition in our street, as the women vied for position, each hoping to establish their home as the premier tea house. My mother played her part in the contest admirably with an apple tart that was particularly popular with the paras. But she and the other women in the street soon realised they could never compete with Auntie Mabel's amazing baking skills, and so eventually they graciously allowed her to claim the crown. The secret of her success was the allure of her tray bakes. All the women knew how to make an excellent tray bake, but Auntie Mabel's were the toast of the town's women's guild. For all its might, the British Army was defenceless to battle against the seduction of her caramel squares. And so every day, Auntie Mabel's small sitting room would be packed with English accents and scones and uniforms and rifles and buttered wheaten slices with homemade blackberry jam from up the fields. The paras would put their rifles in the umbrella stand and get extra butterfly cakes. The soldiers were usually very nice in our street. When they spoke to me, it made me think of when the British explorers with pith helmets talked to the natives in the jungle in Tarzan movies. They were very polite, but they didn't seem to understand our ways very well. Though, of course, you had to be careful when the soldiers were around. If you were out playing with a toy gun in the dark, they might shoot you. We weren't allowed toy guns for Christmas anymore, which was no big sacrifice for me, as I was, after all, the only pacifist paper boy in West Belfast, and I hated guns, apart from ray guns for killing aliens, of course. I noticed from my cross-community conversations with Patrick Walsh between a mauling of Mozart movements at the School of Music that while Protestants called the British Army the soldiers, Catholics preferred to call them the Brits. And that while Protestants seemed to like the soldiers, Catholics would not give a Brit so much as a crumb of a caramel square. Patrick told me stories of how the Brits stopped you and searched you, beat you up and raided your house, and then shot your cousin in the face with a plastic bullet. But Mrs. Piper always said they only did that to Provo sympathisers that wanted to kill them. While I thought that Patrick was telling the truth, it still hurt when he wrote Brits out in the boys' toilets, because I thought that meant me too. One of my most prized possessions was a bit of bomb, so it was. This was a heavy and jagged piece of shrapnel from a German bomb that my father had found as a boy up the Glen Cairn on the slopes of Divis Mountain after an air raid blitz in Belfast in the 1940s. You could still see the shape of the crater in the field where the stray bomb had landed 30 years later. Dad had kept the shrapnel safe ever since and had painted it with some silvery anti-corrosion paint that he had borrowed from the foundry. I knew I could have picked up a piece of shrapnel around Belfast any day at that time, but this relic from the Second World War fascinated me. I imagined a German bomber called Fritz flying over Belfast in a fighter plane and sneezing, accidentally pressing the bomb button before reaching the shipyard, and the bomb falling down on Glen Cairn before the new estate was built and the paramilitaries took over, and exploded in a farmer's field and scaring the cows and all. I had taken the shrapnel into BRA for a history project on the Second World War. And once the history teacher had been reassured that it was a vintage rather than a more contemporary bomb fragment, he was very impressed indeed. And so the shrapnel sat until the end of term on the artefact table at the back of the classroom, alongside ration books and gas masks. So let's say hello, see see who's joining us this evening. Hello, Mary Black and Nigel McComb. Hi, Anne Kirk. Good to have you along again. Kenneth Glenville. Hi, Betty O'Riordan. Glad you're catching up. And hello, Yitzhak and Glenn. Hello, Andrea. Oh, I'm making you hungry for an Ulster fry. Oh, it's hard to resist. Hello, Fiona. How are you? BRA old girl extraordinaire, and the lovely Leslie from up the country, who's lovely Leslie down the stairs tonight. And hello, Andy Macaulay, one of the Macaulay clan around the world. Hi, Robbie Lee. Hi, evening, Susan. Good to have you along. And Conor O'Neill. And hello, Damien in Edinburgh. Hope you're doing well. And hello, Mark Moore as well. And hi, Sadie Hannah. So I'll tell you what happened next in terms of my bit of bomb. My bit of German bomb had always achieved a positive reaction, and so when my father casually suggested I should show it to the soldiers someday, because they would like that sort of thing, I resolved to share my shrapnel with them the very next time they were in our street. The following day, just as I was finishing the papers, I spotted an army patrol at the bottom of the street getting out of a tank and being barked at by Petra. Brilliant! I'm going to show the soldiers my bomb, I said to myself delightedly. I ran to the house, hurled my empty pitch black paper bag under the stairs, where it would hang on a hook beside the hoover and the strap, and quickly shot upstairs to my bedroom to retrieve my striking museum piece. By the time I had and was back out onto the street, the army patrol had already successfully executed a pincer movement up the street towards Auntie Mabel's house, with 2 soldiers already marching past her nasturtium front door. I followed back, my shrapnel so close to my Bay City that the silver paint rubbed off on Woody's nose. Oh, come on in, love, Auntie Mabel, who was always as warm as her freshest scones. I'll make you, she added predictably. Do you want to talk to the soldiers, love? She then asked. I nodded, and as she headed for the scullery to boil the kettle, I was left alone in the sitting room with my many china ornaments, 4 lace doilies, 2 soldiers, and 2 guns. All right, mate, said one soldier who looked like he hadn't started shaving yet. All right, mate, echoed the other one who had a scar on his trigger finger. I've got a bomb to show you, the quiet Belfast boy with ink-dirtied fingers announced. The 2 looked a little startled and moved back very quickly when I suddenly thrust the metal object towards them. The one who had never shaved jumped back so sharply, in fact, that he dropped his rifle on Auntie Mabel and knocked over her china dog. Thankfully, the dog wasn't broken and the gun didn't go off. Jesus Christ, what the hell is that? Asked the one with the scar. I assumed from the profanity that he wasn't a wee good living soldier. It's a bit of a German bomb that Hitler dropped on Belfast during the war. So he did, and my daddy found it up the fields and kept it and said I should show it to yousins because he says yousins would like that sort of thing, so yous would, I replied. The soldier with the scar took the shrapnel and inspected it briefly. He then handed it back to me, saying, Pull the other one, mate, and his colleague joined in a mocking laugh. I was affronted. It had never occurred to me that anyone would doubt the authenticity of my artifact, least of all 2 professionals in the field of war. It's from a real bomb. My daddy found it, and he says it's from a German bomber from the Blitz, and sure, feel how heavy it is. I attempted to explain, as I once again offered the fragment for further investigation to the fresh-faced one. He refused to take it and turned to his mate and said, sniggering, This is what they're all like, mate. You can't trust them. They're always trying to pull the wool over your eyes. I was confused and upset. The only wool in the room was in Auntie Mabel's knitting basket behind the puthie, and I wasn't trying to pull it anywhere near their eyes. although I could see a knitting needle sticking out of the basket, and I had a sudden urge to utilise it as a weapon against my mockers, except they had guns, Paperboy in West Belfast. And why were they talking about me as they, and as if I wasn't even there? Then the one with the scar on his trigger finger said, "Do you think we is fucking thick, mate?" I dared not answer truthfully. Now I was angry. I had never heard the F word in Auntie Mabel's sitting room. This was disrespectful. This was outrageous. Like saying shite in church. The tirade of arrogant ignorance continued. What would the Germans have been doing bombing Belfast anyway? They wasn't even interested in bleeding Ireland. I tried to explain that the Germans had bombed Belfast because our shipyard built lots of ships for the war and that we were part of Britain. But my protectors just laughed. I was clearly wasting my time trying to educate them. Maybe they didn't do history in English schools, or maybe these two hadn't got their 11 plus. Leave it out, mate. You is talking fairy stories and we ain't biting, said the stubbleless one. All of this sounded so much more insulting when delivered with the added authority of an English accent. It was like being told you were officially wrong by Angela Rippon herself on the BBC News. I stormed out of Auntie Mabel's sitting room, cradling my rejected shimmering artefact. It had lost some of its lustre, and not just because some of the silver paint had rubbed off on Woody's nose. As I ran out the front door, I could hear Auntie Mabel calling after me, "What about your juice and jammy Dodgers, love?" I was disappointed, humiliated, and very angry. I knew the soldiers were here to stop the IRA from killing me and that I should be grateful, but I couldn't help wishing those two would choke on one of Auntie Mabel's caramel squares. Maybe Patrick Walsh was right. Brits, I thought crossly. A few weeks later, my relationship with the British Army would deteriorate still further. I was staying late after school for drama practice. It was the dress rehearsal for the adventures of Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn. For weeks I had stayed late every Wednesday, risking not being on time for my papers to dutifully fulfil my limited obligations as supporting actor to Thomas O'Hara, who I had to admit had turned out to be a very good Tom Sawyer. Patricia Thompson was still a girl with breasts playing Huck, which should of course have been my part. Now that we were at the dress rehearsal stage, it was more obvious than ever that Huckleberry Finn had breasts. However, the more I looked at Patricia's chest to check out that this was indeed a visible travesty, the less angry I felt towards her. Somehow it was strange. This bizarre change from hostility to Patricia Thompson's part to attraction to her parts was noted on stage during the dress rehearsal by wee Thomas during the fence painting scene. He whispered in my ear, "Will you stop staring at Huck's ditties, you pervert?" I stopped looking immediately, as I was certain that if Tom Sawyer had noticed that I was staring at Huckleberry Finn's breasts, someone in the audience would be sure to accuse me of some sort of sin. As I left the said dress rehearsal, it was wet and dark as usual. My thoughts were wandering from having homework and doing my papers to how great it would be to have my own TARDIS, to travel home through time and space, maybe with Patricia Thompson as my companion. And so I was unaware that a British soldier had been closely observing my departure from school. The side gate of the school premises was always closed at this time of the day, and so I had jumped over the wall for a shortcut. This was no problem for a paperboy, well experienced in the art of wall jumping. But as I landed on the pavement, the soldier apprehended me immediately. "What you doing?" he asked aggressively. "I've just been at the final dress rehearsal for the adventures of Tom Sawyer and Huckleberry Finn in my school in there," I replied honestly. "Huh?" My interlocutor grunted, a puzzled look on his face. It was then I realised how this must look. I wasn't wearing my school uniform, and I had just jumped over the wall. This poor soldier thinks I'm a terrorist, I thought, although I am wearing a blue duffel coat and a grammar school scarf. I looked more like Paddington Bear than a provo. Name? The soldier demanded. My name's Tony Macaulay, so it is, I answered honestly. Where do you live? He asked next. At the top of the Shankill, I replied honestly. No sooner had I said it than I realised this was not the wisest answer. Up against the wall, my interrogator ordered. I began to wonder if this was what Patrick Walsh called harassment by the British war machine. I obliged, however, and turned around, putting my hands against the wall as the soldier began to search me from my duffel coat hood to my toe. He was quite rough, going through my pockets and shouting at me to keep my legs apart and not to fucking move. When he had finished, I was permitted to turn around again to watch him go through the various suspicious objects he had found on my person. First, he inspected my latest packet of melted white smeedy mice. I prayed he wouldn't think it was Semtex. Next, he examined my Captain Scarlet badge. Captain Scarlet was an indestructible puppet like in Thunderbirds, except he worked for Spectrons. On his cap, he would wear a badge with the Spectrum symbol, and I had got a similar badge free in my Sugar Puffs. What's this? Asked the soldier suspiciously. I was surprised. Maybe they didn't get Captain Scarlet in England. It's a Spectrum badge from Captain Scarlet who fights the Mysterons from Mars, I answered honestly. He grunted again with that puzzled look on his face. The soldier reminded me of the wee hood my father had decked with the pickaxe handle. Even though he was in control of me, he looked scared. I could not take my eyes off his rifle. He was holding it near the trigger. Danger, Will Robinson! Danger, Will Robinson! Don't lie, he said. It's paramilitary. The badge was red, white and blue. He threw it on the pavement and stamped on it angrily with his substantial boots. Now I was really getting worried. According to Patrick Walsh, the Brits would stop you, harass you, put you up against the wall, then search you, beat you up and shoot you in the face with a plastic bullet. I was already halfway through the process, and the getting beaten up part was coming next. I'm not a paramilitary, I'm a paperboy, I said politely. Grunted the soldier again. I seemed to amuse this soldier. He was looking at me the way Mr. Spock would look at strange new life forms in Star Trek. I was just acting a boy painting a fence in school with Tom and Huck, and I need to get home for my papers. Me, I explained. Before he had a chance to utter yet another, his superior officer arrived on the scene. It's okay, soldier, the officer said in a posh voice. That's an orange school. No problems here. Let the little chap go. He walked and looked like the sort of army officer they made fun of in Monty Python. Press a smile as I imagined him breaking out into a silly walk. I had never thought of BRA as an orange school before. Nearly everyone there was Protestant, but they tended to look down on orange men. People at BRA were more interested in rugger and golf than marching and band parades. Nevertheless, although this description of my school by the posh soldier was an accurate one, I appreciated the fact that his upper-class intervention would save me from getting a beating for my affiliation with Spectrum. At least I hoped so anyway. I wondered what the officer would have said about Patrick Walsh's school and what would have happened to Patrick in similar circumstances. Run along now, young chap, he said. And don't fucking do it again, said my young oppressor, shouting after me. I had no idea what he didn't want me to do again. I didn't know what I'd done wrong in the first place, apart from having a Captain Scarlet badge in my pocket from my Sugar Puffs. I was becoming aware of the injustices of life. First, a wee hood had stolen my Thunderbirds badge. And now the British Army had destroyed my Captain Scarlet insignia. Could a boy not live a life free from badge mistreatment? As I ran for the bus so as to ensure I got home in time again to do my papers, I was angry with the soldiers again. I knew they were on our side and they were here, but now I was really starting to dislike them. A pacifist paperboy, I had always been against clavas and dark glasses with guns, but the army were the official ones with guns, and I was starting to mistrust them too. Maybe men should be the same as children, I thought, and none of them should be allowed to have guns. Apart from ray guns, of course. So there you are. That is chapter 13 of Paperboy. So let's say hello to a few people. Hello to Sharon Smith. Yes, we're all doing well here, staying at home and keeping safe. Hope you're all well there too. Hi, Michael McKinley. Glad you're enjoying it. Hi, Jeremy. Good to have you along. And Jim Poole. Oh, I'm glad you're enjoying it, Jim. Hello, Betty Campbell. Lovely to have you here. And David Wells and Natalie Pound from the wonderful Paperboy musical production, and Mark Macaulay as well. I'm glad that you came along this evening and listened to chapter 13. I'll be back same time tomorrow night where I'll be reading chapter 14 from Paperboy. But until then, take care, stay home, stay safe and stay well and stay positive. Bye for now.